My name is Krista Mahr. I am a reporter for Time magazine, and I have just come back from spending 5 weeks in South Sudan. I was looking at the challenges that are facing the country, being the newest country in the world after more than 2 decades of civil war, and the country is very underdeveloped and hasn't gotten a lot of financial help during the war years, and so it finds itself in a really precarious situation where it has to build a lot of its institutions, both government and civil, really from scratch. So that's what I was looking at. The capital city, when I got there, I was surprised at the lack of infrastructure. I've reported in many parts of the developing world, in Asia and in South Asia, but the infrastructure level in those places that I've worked before has been, even if it's old and sort of crumbling, it's been there. Juba is really in a pretty unique situation in that it just literally does not have the roads, it doesn't have an electricity grid. There was no power there for most of the time that I was there. Its system of freshwater filtration is not up to par to keep up with its rapid urbanization. In total, there are less than 150 kilometers of paved roads, which is about less than 75 miles or something like that. So I mean, it's a really, really small number. It's kind of hard to imagine getting around. I mean, there are between 7 and 10 million people living in South Sudan. They're not exactly sure how many, and only about 1 million of those people are living in Juba, which has the majority of those paved roads. So if you're anywhere outside of the city where most of the country is living, it's almost impossible to get around. And the way that translates into their livelihood and quality of life is that it's very difficult to get health care, it's very difficult to get access to education, and people are really isolated. But I mean, the counterpoint to that, though, is the South Sudanese I talked to say that that's a totally, that's a skewed point of view, because if I was there 10 years ago and I saw Juba now, I would think my perspective would be totally different, because so much has changed and it has come a really long way. So I think that's just my Western perspective. I think from a South Sudanese point of view, Juba is headed in a really good direction. Literally, when I got there, all the ministries had just been reappointed. So there were all new ministers and all new deputy ministers and all new staffs, and we're all trying to pass all of their laws for their various ministries when I was there. So I would talk to somebody, well, is there a petroleum bill about how to manage the petroleum income in the north of the country? And they would be like, well, it's before. Not yet. We have a draft of the law, and it would be, I mean, it's really like that in several of the ministry in terms of road safety, environmental bills. I mean, these are all sort of in their infancy still. And so what the country is working with is a constitution that is not fully, I mean, it's sort of adopted from the constitution that they used to share with Khartoum, and they don't have their own laws on the books yet. So that makes it really hard for anything to really move forward, because everyone's kind of having to wait until those laws get passed to be able to figure out how to make electricity better, or how to expand the oil industry. So that's, I'd say, one of the biggest challenges is getting the legal processes set up. The president of South Sudan, when I was in the country, spoke before the General Assembly, and he said, we are not rebuilding this country, we're building this country. So please keep that in mind. We really need the international community's help getting this done. There were sort of an endless amount of stories to be told. I could have easily stayed there for 6 more months and kept working. It really makes you realize how the limited appetite of different editors and different news organizations doesn't really necessarily reflect what's happening on the ground. There's always a lot there that we don't always get access to. So I felt really lucky to be able to do it.